I don't know about you guys, but having grown up inside of the church, there are certain words that when I hear them, they really have very little impact on my thoughts. Sadly, one of those words is the name of God himself. He was the answer to basically every Sunday school question. He is all that we talk about. He is the center of it all, which is rightly so. Unfortunately, the name of God himself tends to get lost, and my brain tends to do a little bit of glazing over when I hear it. It's like, oh yeah, God, I know about him. I've heard about him. I've heard about him all my life, so I tend to not really pay attention to his name so much. I think especially in a culture where the name of God gets used so frequently, usually inappropriately, but frequently nevertheless, it's easy for us to glaze over his name. So I wanted to take a minute today, and this is part of a little bit of a sermon that I gave maybe about a month ago now. You'll find the link down below if you want to hear the rest of the sermon, but I wanted to just take a little snippet on the name of God and share that with you because I think it's really important to share, especially, like I said, for those of us who've grown up inside of the church. So, in order to get out of this glazed over notion when we hear the name of God and try to get a little bit of reverence back for what his name actually packs with it, I want to go back to the name of Exodus, where God gives us his name out of his own mouth. So we'll find that in Exodus 3. It says, picking it up at verse 13, it says, "Then God said to Moses, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. So the name I am is the name that God gives to himself. Now we know I am to be translated as Yahweh. That's my little budgie chiming in his 2 cents worth. But every time we see the name Lord in all capital letters inside of the Old Testament, we can substitute that with the name Yahweh. And what God was trying to do was help us to understand something super important about his nature and the characteristic of God that we absolutely need to grasp. What he's saying is he is a consistent God. Now let me explain. If I were to tell you who I am, I would tell you that who I was yesterday is not who I am today, nor who I will become tomorrow. I am always being changed and altered by the people around me and the circumstances in my life. What God is saying is, I am who I am yesterday, I am who I am today, and I am who I am tomorrow. He is consistent by nature, and that in and of itself should just bring us absolute reverence, because now we know that inside of our inconsistent world, we are serving a God who is consistent. What this also means is that any other name that we choose to give to God or that's listed inside of the Bible, including things like the rock. So we're going to take that one for example. God is saying that he is the rock yesterday, he is the rock today, and he is the rock tomorrow. He's not crumbling. The rock isn't getting smaller. The rock is not falling apart. The rock is the same, and he is where we plant our feet. He is where we can find our consistent footholding because he is the rock with which we plant ourselves on. He is consistent. I want to look at one more other name that we give to God. That's the name Creator. We understand that he's the creator because we can read about it in the book of Genesis, how he created the world. But because we have to hold it up to the name that he gave himself, that means that he is consistent in character, we also have to understand that God is not just the creator once. He did not create the world and then sit back and do nothing and watch history unfold. No, he is the creator, but he is also creating, and he also will still be creating in the future. It is by the command of his voice that little sprouts sprout out from the dirt, by the command of his voice that babies are conceived, by the command of his voice that the seasons change. He is still creating. He has not left us alone inside of his creation, which also speaks volumes to the intimacy that God brings to humankind. God is not just a God who sits on his throne, though he does sit on a throne and he is worthy of all praise. He is not afraid to get off of his throne and be intimately involved with people. So now we can understand that when we say God, we are referring to this great, magnificent God who calls himself the Yahweh, the I Am, the God who is consistent and intimately involved with us, no matter what our day looks like. No matter what's unfolding in front of us, we can trust this God who is consistent in nature. Take care, everyone.